To stop the world is not about halting the spinning of the planet or pausing time itself. It is a phrase borrowed from the writings of Carlos Castaneda, but the concept reaches far beyond his work and into older currents of mystical practice. At its core, it means suspending the ordinary framework through which we interpret reality, or the mental grid of labels, associations, and habitual patterns that normally dictate how we experience life. When that grid is interrupted, the world as we know it ceases to exist, if only for a moment, and another mode of perception becomes available. In daily life, the world is largely constructed by consensus. We walk through our days naming things, categorizing, and predicting outcomes. This shared reality is useful. It keeps us fed, clothed, and able to navigate society. But it is also a prison of sorts, one that conditions us to see only what fits into the pre approved template of reality. Stopping the world is about breaking that template, cracking the lens so that light from other angles can slip through. It is not about abandoning reality altogether, but piercing it so that the deeper layers hidden beneath may reveal themselves. Mystics, shamans, and magicians have always sought such moments. Some find them in meditation, others in trance or through ritual ordeal. In those altered states, the normal hierarchy of perception collapses. Time stretches or stops, objects lose their solidity, and the boundary between self and other blurs. In such moments, one recognizes that the world is not fixed but fluid, and that consciousness itself plays a role in shaping its contours. The importance of stopping the world lies in its potential for transformation. To see beyond the habitual is to glimpse freedom, freedom from mechanical thought, freedom from the tyranny of old narratives, freedom from the illusions that bind us. It is a doorway into both knowledge and power, but also into humility, for we realize how little of reality we ordinarily perceive. Stopping the world is, therefore, less an end in itself and more an initiation, an opening onto the mystery that waits just beyond the veil of the everyday. Although the phrase stopping the world becomes popular or became popular through Carlos Castaneda's works in the late 20th century, the practice itself is much older and resonates with traditions across the globe. Castaneda's teacher, the Yaqui sorcerer Don Juan Matus, described it as a suspension of ordinary perception, where the flow of everyday interpretation is halted, allowing another mode of awareness to emerge. While the anthropological accuracy of Castaneda's accounts remains disputed, the experiential truth of what he described has deep roots in mystical and magical practice. In shamanic traditions, the shaman must often break with consensus reality, and in order to enter the spirit world, drumming, chanting, fasting, and other ordeals are not arbitrary. They are methods of interrupting ordinary cognition so that vision can or may open to subtler realities. In many cases, these practices amount to stopping the world, forcing the mind to step outside its accustomed rhythm so that something wholly other can be encountered. Mystical traditions in both East and West describe similar moments. Zen Buddhism speaks of satori, which is sudden awakening, where the rigid grasp of conceptual thought collapses and one perceives reality directly. In Christian mysticism, figures like Meister Eckhart and the Desert Fathers wrote of silence and stillness as gateways to God, moments in which worldly distractions ceased and divine presence flooded in. Even the Neoplatonists describe states where the soul, unbound from sensory clutter, could perceive the one beyond all forms. What these diverse traditions share is the understanding that the ordinary mode of perception is limited. It keeps us oriented in society, but prevents us from perceiving the deeper structures of existence. To stop the world is to achieve a controlled break with that ordinary mode, an intentional dislodging of awareness. Without such rupture, the seeker remains confined to the flat plane of appearances, mistaking the map for the territory. Thus, the origins of the practice lie not in any single culture, but in the universal human pursuit of expanded perception. Whether framed as communion with spirits, union with God, or awakening to the true nature of mind, the essence remains the same. The everyday world must be stopped so that the hidden world can be revealed. To stop the world is, above all, an act of perception. It does not destroy reality, it alters the way we engage with it. Our minds are conditioned to interpret everything we see, hear, and feel through the lens of prior knowledge. We do not encounter the world raw. We meet it pre-filtered, already labeled, already categorized. This interpretive mechanism is what allows us to function efficiently, but it also blinds us. We no longer see the tree, we see tree, a concept, a word, a placeholder for countless assumptions. Stopping the world strips away that conceptual layer and leaves us staring directly into being itself. Castaneda described this shift as moving from the tonal, the organized world of the everyday, into the nahual, the unstructured, mysterious current of existence. In practical terms, it is the difference between seeing the world as a collection of objects to be named and used and experiencing it as a living field of energy and presence. A stone is no longer just a stone. It vibrates, breathes, and communicates in ways that defy language. Other traditions echo this transformation. Zen teachers speak of beginner's mind, a state where things are encountered without preconception. Mystics of the apophatic tradition describe it as unknowing, an openness that dismantles the illusion of certainty. Shamans might describe it as stepping into the spirit world, overlaying the physical. Each is pointing to the same altered mode of perception, a break with the habitual patterns that confine our awareness. The effect of such a shift can be disorienting, even frightening. The ordinary scaffolding of meaning falls away, leaving the raw strangeness of the real. Colors may appear more vivid, sounds more layered, time distorted. The boundary between the self and the environment softens, sometimes to the point of vanishing. Yet, in this altered perception lies the possibility of revelation. Hidden structures, subtle presences, and deep truths begin to surface. To see beyond the ordinary is not simply a trick of the senses, it is the first step into another order of reality. Stopping the world does not erase the everyday, it reveals that the everyday was never the whole picture to begin with. If stopping the world is essentially about interrupting habitual perception, then the technique involved, or the techniques involved, are designed to create that rupture. Different traditions have developed their own methods, but they all share a common aim: to silence the constant chatter of the interpreting mind and shift awareness into a raw, unmediated state. One of the simplest yet most difficult methods is deep meditation. By focusing on the breath or a mantra, the practitioner gradually interrupts the stream of thought. At first, distractions multiply as though the mind resists the intrusion. But with persistence, a moment arrives when the commentary ceases and perception is no longer filtered. Even a fleeting taste of that silence is enough to reveal what lies beneath the ordinary world. Ritual and ordeal can also serve the same purpose. Prolonged fasting, sleepless vigils, and exposure to the elements are ancient methods of dislodging the mind from its usual anchors. The discomfort forces a break in the ordinary rhythm, cracking the rigid surface of perception. Shamans have long relied on drumming and chanting, rhythms that shift the brain into altered states, creating a tunnel into other modes of awareness. More accessible methods exist too. Castaneda wrote of using not doing as a technique, which is deliberately interrupting the flow of habit by engaging with the world in strange, non functional ways. I spoke about not doing last month. If you want more information on that, go and check it out. However, it might mean gazing at a familiar object until it stops being a thing and starts revealing its strangeness. It could be walking backwards, using the non-dominant hand for daily tasks, or deliberately engaging in silence in situations where speech is expected. These small acts undermine the tyranny of the habitual and open cracks in the consensus world. Dream practices also hold power here. Lucid dreaming, or even the disciplined recording of dreams, destabilizes the rigid line we draw between waking and sleeping reality. As the boundary softens, the mind learns to see the world as more fluid, more alive, and less constrained by fixed interpretation. No matter the method, the aim is always the same: to suspend the interpretive machinery that keeps us confined to the ordinary. Once interrupted, even for a moment, the veil thins, and through that breach, another order of reality becomes visible. Silence and emptiness are not just side effects of stopping the world, they are its very heart. When the endless commentary of the mind quiets, what fills the space is not more thought or clearer concepts, but a vastness that resists definition. This emptiness is not void in the sense of absence, it is a fertile nothingness, the pregnant silence from which insight and vision emerge. Mystical traditions across cultures describe this encounter. In Zen, silence is cultivated through seated meditation until the chatter of thought collapses and the practitioner glimpses reality without mediation. In the apophatic theology of the Christian mystics, God is not approached through words or images, but through the cloud of unknowing, which is a silence so profound that it breaks open into a divine encounter. In Sufi practice, the zikr may begin with repetitive invocation, but it culminates in a stillness where only presence remains. All speak of a clearing in which the ordinary noise of the world is set aside and a deeper reality stands revealed. For the practitioner, cultivating silence and emptiness is a discipline. It requires resisting the urge to fill the space with distraction, to immediately replace silence with content. Our culture is uncomfortable with stillness. The constant hum of media, conversation, and self-talk keeps the silence at bay, yet it is only when the silence is embraced that the machinery of interpretation can be switched off. In this state, perception is heightened. Colors, sounds, and sensations are no longer dulled by the veil of habitual thought. More importantly, one begins to sense the currents beneath appearances, the subtle movements of energy, the presence of spirits, the interconnectedness of all things. Silence and emptiness act as a kind of resonant chamber in which the hidden can finally be heard. Thus, stopping the world is inseparable from cultivating silence. Without it, perception remains trapped in its usual loops. With it, a doorway opens into vision, into mystery, into the living pulse of reality itself. Stopping the world is not without its perils. The experience of disengaging from habitual perception, of stepping out of ordinary time and thought, can be disorienting, even destabilizing. It is not a casual practice to be undertaken lightly, nor is it a technique that guarantees comfort or clarity. For the unprepared, the collapse of familiar reference points can feel like a loss of self, a vertigo in which the mind grasps at shadows. One common misstep is mistaking dissociation for stopping the world. In this case, the practitioner withdraws not into clarity but into avoidance, numbing experience rather than attending to it. This is the seduction of escapism, the illusion that one has transcended the world when in fact one has simply turned away from it. Another danger lies in over-intellectualization. Some attempt to achieve the state by force of reasoning, cataloging steps, by trying to predict outcomes. The world cannot be stopped with logic. The mind must yield to its own limits rather than seek to circumvent them. Physical and emotional strain can also occur. Extended periods of intense inner work, especially without grounding, can leave the practitioner drained, anxious, or unbalanced. Like any profound shift in consciousness, stopping the world requires careful attention to bodily and emotional well-being. Integration after a session is as important as the practice itself. Without it, experiences may fragment or remain disconnected from daily life. There is also the risk of misinterpretation. The silence, emptiness, and stillness encountered are not inherently instructive or moral. They reveal patterns, possibilities, and realities, but the practitioner must discern meaning with care. Misreading these impressions can lead to confusion, arrogance, or misguided action. Spiritually, ethically, and psychologically, humility is essential. Despite these dangers, the risks are not reasons to avoid the practice, but reminders to approach it with respect. Structured guidance, measured pacing, and attentive self-observation mitigate most pitfalls. The world cannot be stopped recklessly. It must be paused with skill and care, each step acknowledged and integrated. In doing so, the practitioner learns not only how to halt the machinery of habitual perception, but also how to navigate its subtle dangers with wisdom and steadiness. Stopping the world opens a doorway, but integration is what transforms the doorway into a path. The visions, insights, and perceptual shifts encountered during the practice are not automatically understood or applied. They require careful attention and deliberate translation into the ordinary flow of life. Without integration, the clarity gained risks dissolving as soon as the habitual consciousness resumes, leaving only a vague sense of having glimpsed something profound. The first step in integration is grounding. Physical awareness, the body, the breath, the senses, serves as an anchor to which the mind can return. Simple practices, such as walking mindfully, stretching, or focusing on tactile sensations, help reorient consciousness while allowing the memory of the halted world to remain accessible. This anchoring is not a return to the mundane, but a bridge between extraordinary perception and daily experience. Journaling or recording impressions is another key tool. Writing down thoughts, emotions, and images while they are still vivid preserves details that might otherwise fade. The act of articulating what was encountered forces the mind to process and contextualize the experience, transforming fleeting insight into usable understanding. Symbols, metaphors, and emotional textures often carry more truth than literal interpretations, so notes should embrace subjective expression as much as objective description. Reflection and dialogue deepen integration. Discussing experiences with trusted companions or guides, or simply meditating on the events of the session, allows patterns to emerge and insights to consolidate. Questions naturally arise. How does this altered perception inform daily choices? What has shifted in understanding of self, others, or reality? Integration is not passive, it demands engagement, discernment, and honesty. Lastly, small repeated acts of application embed the practice into life. A perception gained in stillness may reveal ethical clarity, creative inspiration, or a new awareness of interconnection. Applying these lessons, whether in decision making, creative work, or spiritual practice, cements the vision. The world has been stopped, but it is in the careful re entry and measured translation of that pause that the experience becomes truly transformative. Integration is thus a dynamic process, a careful negotiation between the extraordinary and the ordinary. The practitioner learns to hold the vision lightly yet firmly, allowing it to inform daily existence without clinging or distortion. It is here, in this delicate balance, that the work of stopping the world extends beyond the session itself, shaping perception, understanding, and action long after the stillness has passed. Stopping the world is not a one-off achievement. It is an invitation to live between worlds. The practice offers more than temporary stillness. It cultivates a subtle awareness that persists even as the rhythms of ordinary life resume. Those who engage with it begin to see the interstices of existence, the spaces between thought and sensation, action and consequence, self and environment. Living between worlds is less about escaping the ordinary and more about perceiving it with greater depth and clarity. This state of liminality requires ongoing attention. The insights gained from halting the world are fragile if ignored, and the practitioner must develop habits that support continual awareness. Regular pauses, mindful observation, and reflective practice act as threads that weave extraordinary perception into everyday life. Even in the midst of routine, the mind learns to recognize the subtle layers of reality, revealing connections and patterns previously unnoticed. Living between worlds also transforms relationships with oneself, others, and the broader environment. Empathy, patience, and presence often deepen as the practitioner recognizes the fluidity and interconnectedness of all experience. Conflicts and challenges may not vanish, but the capacity to navigate them with conscious intention grows. The world remains in motion, but the practitioner carries within a space of stillness, a center from which choices can be made deliberately rather than reactively. Importantly, this is not a retreat from life, but a recalibration of engagement. Stopping the world teaches the value of observation before action, contemplation before reaction. It is a practice in which the extraordinary informs the ordinary, rather than replacing it. The balance between the two becomes the measure of progress, the ability to act effectively in daily life while maintaining awareness of larger patterns, deeper truths, and the subtle rhythms of being. Ultimately, living between worlds is a lifelong journey. Each pause, each moment of suspended perception adds to a growing capacity for insight, discernment, and presence. The world may never truly stop, but the practitioner who has glimpsed its still point carries the knowledge that stillness can exist within motion, that clarity can arise amid chaos, and that even in the flow of everyday life, the extraordinary is never far away.